And hello from Mississippi, and thanks again for this opportunity to participate in this workshop today. I would love to be with you today up there in beautiful Commonwealth of Virginia, but it just wasn't possible, so we'll turn to Plan B with modern technology and go from there. But quickly, though, because we've got a lot to cover in a short period of time, let's get into REAP, talking about REAP, R-E-A-P, which you've already heard quite a bit about today. But some key points I will cover today is I'm not going to be telling you how to put together a grant application. Hopefully someone in the workshop earlier has already talked about some of the intricate details of how to put the package together and everything that's required to be there. But getting into my part, though, is just simply having a good project and putting together an application that just simply meets the REAP program guidelines is not enough. You've got to remember that this process, this grant application process, is a ball game. It's just like a ball game. The team with the most points is going to win. So remember that there are 9 different categories of points, which add up to around 125 points, I believe. And you have to address every one of these categories. If you just ignore one, then you're pretty well out of the ball game. So getting started, the first key to remember is don't be greedy. REAP has become very competitive, especially over the last 3 years or so. In 2011, the agency Rural Development received 3 times more requests than they had money for. So some points there is, if at all possible, keep your grant request under $20,000. There's a set-aside pool of money for a request of that size. So if you don't get funded in that pool, you still are eligible to compete with the big guys, so to speak. So try to keep your request at less than $20,000. So this would mean that you'd have a project cost of $80,000, or you could have more than an $80,000 project. I've had clients that have had a $200,000 project, but they only requested $20,000 to be more competitive because they had the other match. And speaking of the match, be sure that you document the availability of that match, because if you are only requesting $20,000 and you have more than an $80,000 project, obviously you have to show that you've got more than 75% match. Financial match. And by all means, try not to request more than a $50,000 grant, because you lose 5 points there. If your project cost goes over $200,000, you lose 5 points. Now, and it just puts you behind to start with. One exception to that, the renewable energy projects applications seem to be favored by, and they are, by bonus points at the national funding level. So if you've got a real good renewable energy project, yes, you can consider going for more than a $50,000 grant, or a project larger than $200,000. Talk a little bit about applicant eligibility. And most of you, I'm assuming, probably are ag producers. But if you are an ag producer with a past year, the gross sales or the value of production, and that's gross now, top line, more than $200,000, be sure that you apply as a very small business. You have that option. Apply as a very small business to avoid losing 5 points or 10 points. If you're over $200,000, you lose 5 points. If you're over $600,000, you lose another 5 points. As long as you don't go over $1 million. Now, if you go over $750,000, of course you are what you are, and what you did the past year, that's what you are, and you have to live with it. But if you are greater, your last year's gross income was greater than $750,000, then you have to apply as a small business. You cannot apply as an ag producer. All of the ag categories are established by SBA, and the maximum allowable income is $750,000 for you to even apply for the REAP grant as an ag producer. So you have to apply as a small business. Go to the website. You see it there on the screen. First of all, especially if you are a small business, go to the website, find your code, your NAICS code, and see what the maximum income level is that for you to be eligible to apply before you go to any trouble at all. If you have $1 million in gross annual receipts, or if you have more than 15 employees, whether you're a small business or an ag producer, you do not qualify to apply as a very small business. So you lose 10 points there. There's nothing you can do about that. But it does drastically reduce your chances of being funded. But you are what you are, so you have to live with it and try to by all means, do the best you can in the other categories. As far as the energy audit, if your total project cost is less than $50,000, that's actually the best category to be in, because you can get a bonus of 5 points if you will go with a full energy audit, assuming, of course, that you are a energy efficiency project and not a renewable energy. You can go with a full energy audit versus a energy assessment, and you can get 5 points bonus. So that's the best category. The most competitive of all is 50,000 project or less. And make sure that the energy audit contains all of the required components that you see listed there. I'm not going to go over those point by point. You've got them in front of you. They're pretty descriptive, and just make sure, though, that your auditor knows what has to be in there, and make sure they contain, as a minimum, all of the points you see on that screen. As you're working with the energy auditor, be sure that the project cost that you provide the energy auditor, or the contractor's quote that you provide the energy auditor, and what he puts in his audit, in his analysis for return on investment and so forth, that they match. By all means, make sure they match. Be sure that everything that you propose to do in your project is covered in the energy audit. If you leave one item out, that item is not eligible to apply to be included in the REAP application. Inform your energy auditor on the points breakdown. They may not be that familiar with the points categories of REAP. And there are 2 categories that the energy auditor needs to be really conscious of. One is the energy conservation category, or the energy generation category if you're renewable energy. And those categories of 5, 10, and 15 points if you have greater than 20, 30, or 35% energy savings, respectively, are what they need to be aware of. And look for opportunities to get to the next point, higher point category, or encourage your auditor to do that. By all means, I have received some audit reports sometimes that might have a 19.9% energy savings. Do not send in an application like that. If it's a 19.9 or 29.9 or 8 or 7 or 34, if you're just below a category break, get back with the energy auditor and see if there are some other items you can add or something you can do to try to get over the hump to get that extra 5, 10, or 15 points. And when it boils down to it, really, in the last couple of years, if you do not have 35% energy savings or greater, your chance of getting funded are very, very slim, very slim. Also, make sure the energy auditor understands the return on investment category of 5, 10, and 15 points for less than 4 years, less than 8 years, less than 12 years. And again, if your return on investment is greater than 4 years, your chances are just very slim of getting funded. It's just the reality of the competitive nature nowadays. If you're above that 4-year payback period, if you're 5, 6, or 7 years out there on the payback period, look at your overall project, and of course the audit report is going to include a table that is listed in order of all the retrofits that are being proposed, with the top item in the table having the shortest return on investment. The bottom item is going to be the longest return on investment. So start cutting off items on the bottom until you can get under a 4-year return on investment. And you can do that by, one way they can do that is normally you look at the energy use, the expenses, your energy consumption expenses for the most recent 12-month period. But if you know that your energy costs were higher, if you look at it over a 24-month or even a 36-month period, then provide that information to the energy auditor, and that may kick you over the next point, or below the next point category is what you're looking for. It's okay to use more than 12 months if you need to. Document your 12-month energy use. Get a good, clean consumption history report from your utility and include that in the application. At least provide it to the energy auditor, and then in the application itself, at least provide one recent monthly electric bill and one recent gas is involved ticket, just to document that you are the account holder and to document who the utility provider is. It just increases credibility for your application. Talk just a little bit about the financial match. Be sure that you document the financial match. Document it well. You have to get a letter from your lender, and that letter needs to state in the letter the amount of the commitment, the purpose of those funds. It needs to make specific reference to the REAP program. It needs to state the interest rate and terms, or length of the loan. The bank letter cannot and must not contain any subject to conditions other than two things that are allowed by the guidelines. It can be subject to the applicant securing the REAP grant, or it can be subject to the property appraisal. But do not allow the letter that you get from your lender to have some generic statements in there that say something like subject to accepted banking procedures or subject to normal underwriting requirements. That can get your letter kicked out, and if you lose that, I'm sorry, I think it's 15 points. You're basically out. And the letter must be a commitment letter. It cannot just say we will consider a loan application for the applicant. And by the way, if your match is coming from available cash on hand, just get a copy of the most recent statement of that CD or the bank savings account or whatever it might be, and write across the statement, you the applicant, just write across a simple statement that I am committing whatever dollars is needed to get your 75% or required match of the above available funds to this REAP project, and sign it and date it. Just write it across in the margin or somewhere on that financial statement. And the contractor and the lender may be one and the same, by the way, but be sure to include a copy of the purchase of finance agreement. Okay, for the contractor, you're financing your improvements through the contractor, and that's acceptable. Okay, as far as documentation of your project cost, obviously you need to get a recent quote from the contractor, a proposed contractor, a potential contractor, and have him to itemize it as much as possible, showing the specifications and so forth. And then be sure to include a letter also from the contractor that includes these statements, and you've got it in writing in a handout. I won't go over that too. I want to spend a few more time on some other items, but well, I'll go over it real quickly. The statement of how long the contractor's been in. This could be a letter on his letterhead, his or her letterhead, just how long they've been in business, how many of these systems they've proposed, just increasing the credibility of are they a capable contractor, what type of experience they have. Really just a short resume. But also it must contain a statement on the warranties, either on the quote, the itemized quote, or in his letter. One of the two needs to state the warranties for all the critical components that he's quoting you for. Because if you don't, you will lose some points there, lose 5 points. And then just how long he's been in business, include that in the letter too. Speaking of warranty, you do get a bonus points, and these are some critical points. It's hard to get sometime, I know, and most of the projects, the hundreds I've worked on, most of them do not get this 5 points. But if the contractor can include a warranty of 5 years or longer on all the key components, and its cost looks realistic to you, go ahead and get him to include that in his quote, and not just a statement on the quote that it's available, because that will not get you the bonus 5 points. You can enter into your application a quote from the contractor that shows that he is quoting you the cost of that 5-year warranty, additional warranty. Then you will get the extra 5 points, and that's a good bonus point to get. The technical report is the big section of the application. It's 35 points out of the possible 125. But be sure, and the technical report itself has I think it's about 8 different point categories, but be sure that you address the big point items. focus especially on addressing those. Because if you look at designing, engineering, and the project economic assessment, those together add up to be 50% of 35 points. 50% of the 35 points now, not the total project, 125 points. And don't overlook the other two items of the qualifications of the project team and the energy resource assessment, because those are 10 points. But all the other categories, and there are probably at least 4 or 5 other categories, but they're 5-point items. But by all means, address those 30% and 20% items real good. Address them all, because you can't afford to lose any points. But really spend some time on those 30 and 20 and even the 10-point items. Qualifications of the project team, be sure to include in your application. Just resumes of the experience and qualifications of you, the applicant, of the potential contractor, of the energy auditor, of the project designer or consultant if you have one involved. Just to increase your technical merit, or get some more points there. Excuse me. A quick thing here, applicant serving as a project contractor. You, the applicant, can install your own project. You can be your own project contractor. But you have to clearly show the agency that what your experience is and your qualifications that would enable you to do that, okay? So, and do the same for your consultant, because if you are your private contractor, you do have to also identify you'll see it underlined down at the bottom, a qualified consultant. Independent, professionally responsible, qualified consultant has to work with you on the project. So identify that person up front in your application. The environmental support letter. Be sure to get a letter. You cannot overlook this 10-point item. Be sure to get a letter from the appropriate state agency that states that your project contributes to the environmental goals of another federal, state, or local program. And in Virginia, you'll see the links there to the Department of Mines, Minerals, and Energy. If you are a prior REAP grantee within the past 2 years and you are reapplying again, you are going to lose 5 points. It makes it pretty tough, so just be aware of that before you enter into the process. And if you're in that category, by all means, you've got to maximize the other categories as much as possible. Proof of ownership and or management control over your REAP project. Just include documentation that shows that. Usually we include a copy of the deed, or it could be a copy of a recent property tax payment. And you can be leasing it. There's a statement that needs to be in the lease agreement. If you, and I won't go into details, it's in front of you there, but something wording similar to that. If you are leasing it, do have control over it for a period of time. There are other items that are required. I just listed those there for you to have for quick reference, and there may even be more than this now, but just be sure to have all of those items. And then one thing in the process, you do have to go through the, you have to get the DUNS number, the DUNS number, and you have to go into a new system. It used to be CCR registration. It's now SAM, and I'm not even sure what SAM stands for now. It's actually coming online the 30th of July in a few days. So you do have to do that process. Your DUNS you have to have at the time of application. The SAMs you have a few days to get it, but you do have to go ahead and register there too. And be fully aware, outside of REAP, don't be putting all your eggs in one basket, of course. Be aware of other incentives that may be out there in your state. And go to this website and see the link there in the middle of the screen, and find out what some of the utilities in your area or some other state agencies may be offering also. But just remember, you cannot match federal funds with federal funds. And that pretty well wraps up my presentation, and I'll be available for questions later on. Thank you very much for this opportunity.